She slid the envelope across the glass table like she was passing me the check at a diner. No eye contact. No pause. Just a slight tilt of her head, the kind my ex-wife used to do when she was pretending to listen. The envelope had my name printed on it in a font that looked almost apologetic. Cream-colored paper. Thick stock. Expensive. The kind of paper a company uses when they want the firing to feel like a gift. I didn't open it right away. I just watched her fingers retreat back to her coffee cup, the manicure catching the overhead light, and I thought about how 5 days ago I had been in Osaka, shaking hands with a man named Hiroshi Tanaka, closing the biggest deal of my career. $82 million. A 7-year supply contract for our precision bearings, locked in before the Japanese yen recovered, structured so our margins widened every year it ran. I had flown back on a red-eye. I had not slept in my own bed for 19 days, and now the head of HR, a woman named Brenda Callahan, was sliding an envelope across a table and telling me, without telling me, that the company was done with me. "Ray," she said finally, "this isn't personal." I almost laughed. I've never in my life heard somebody say that phrase when it wasn't, in fact, extremely personal. I set my hand on the envelope but didn't pick it up. The conference room was on the 42nd floor of a building in downtown Cleveland, glass on 3 sides, and you could see the lake from where I was sitting. Gray water, gray sky, gray everything, including the woman sitting across from me. "Go ahead," I said. "Say the words." She tilted her head again. That little tilt. "The company is restructuring the senior sales division. Your position is being eliminated effective today. We'd like to offer you a severance package that reflects your years of service." "How much?" 3 months base salary. Standard. I nodded slow. 3 months. I had been with Merrick Industrial for 11 years. I had brought in over $400 million in contract value during that time. I had built the Asia-Pacific desk from a single phone and a fax machine into a 22-person operation doing 9 figures a year, and they were offering me 3 months. "The Tanaka deal," I said. $82 million. I signed it last Friday. We're aware of your recent contributions. Then you're aware that my commission on that deal, per the formula in my contract, comes out to a little over $8 million, payable at the end of this quarter. Brenda's face did not move. Not a muscle. I have to give her credit for that. She had been coached. Somebody had walked her through this conversation, probably more than once, probably that very morning, and she had been told not to react to specific numbers. But I saw her swallow, a small swallow, a dry one. "The severance package," she said, "includes a waiver of any outstanding compensation claims. By accepting the package, you release the company from any further obligations, including commission structures that may or may not have applied to deals in progress." Deals in progress. That's the language. The deal is signed, Brenda. The contract is executed. The money is wired into escrow. Meagle's position is that commissions vest at payment, not at signature. Since you're no longer an employee when the first payment clears, the commission structure doesn't apply. I looked at the envelope. I looked at the gray lake. I looked at Brenda Callahan, who had been to my daughter's wedding 2 years ago, who had cried during my toast, who had held my wife's hand at her funeral 8 months later. I thought about saying something cruel. I thought about standing up and flipping the table. I thought about standing up and flipping the table. I thought about a lot of things. Instead, I picked up the envelope, slid it into the inside pocket of my jacket without opening it, and stood up. "I'll have my attorney reach out," I said. "Ray, please, don't make this harder than it needs to be." I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't say anything else. I took the elevator down 42 floors, got in my car in the parking garage, and sat there for about 10 minutes with my hands on the wheel, not turning the key. Then I drove home. My house is in Rocky River, a quiet suburb on the west side, a brick colonial with a big maple in the front yard that my late wife, Laura, had planted the summer we moved in. I sat in the driveway for a while. I thought about her. I thought about her. I thought about what she would have said. Laura had been an attorney, a good one, a tax and contract specialist who had worked at one of the big firms downtown until the cancer took her 3 years ago. She had drafted my employment contract with Merrick back in 2014 when I was being promoted to Senior Director of Strategic Accounts, and the company was trying to lowball me on comp Laura had sat at her kitchen table for 3 nights straight, red pen in hand, rewriting clauses. I had forgotten most of what she put in there. You sign a contract, you file it. You don't look at it again unless something breaks. Something had just broken. I went into the house. I went to the office upstairs, which had been Laura's office, and which still had her filing cabinets along the wall. I knelt down, pulled open the bottom drawer, and started digging through the manila folders. Tax returns, mortgage documents, life insurance, and near the back, in a folder labeled in her looping handwriting, Ray Merrick Industrial, 2014 Employment Agreement. I pulled it out and brought it downstairs to the kitchen table. I made a pot of coffee. I sat down. I started reading. The contract was 37 pages. Laura had written all over it, in blue ink in the margins. Little notes to herself. Little notes to me. Push back on non-compete. 24 mo minimum, not 36. Add language deferred comp. I smiled, in spite of everything. She had been so much smarter than me. She had been smarter than most of the attorneys she worked with. On page 19, I found what I was looking for. Section 7.4, Commission Structure and Deferred Compensation. The section ran for almost 2 full pages, and I had to read it 3 times before I understood it fully. Because legal language is designed to be read by lawyers, not by guys like me. But when I got it, and I felt my pulse pick up. The clause was titled Deferred Commission Vesting Upon Involuntary Separation. Laura had circled the title in blue ink and written, in the margin, belt and suspenders. They won't try anything but just in case. What the clause said, in essence, was this. Any contract I originated and executed, meaning any deal where my signature was on the company side of the document, would trigger a commission that vested at execution, not at payment. And if I was terminated without cause within 180 days of executing such a deal, the full commission schedule would remain in force as if I had never been terminated. The company would be obligated to pay out every scheduled commission payment on the original timeline regardless of my employment status. And there was more. Laura, being Laura, had added a kicker. If the company terminated me and attempted to withhold commissions rightfully earned under this clause, the commission amount would double as liquidated damages. Not triple, not quintuple, just double. Because Laura was reasonable. Because Laura wanted the clause to hold up in court and clauses that look punitive get thrown out. Double was reasonable. Double would stand. 8 million. Doubled was 16 million. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the page. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I cried. Not for the money, for Laura. For the fact that 3 years after she died, she was still sitting next to me at this table, protecting me, her red pen working in the margins of my life. Then I wiped my face, made a fresh pot of coffee, and pulled out my laptop. The first person I called was a man named Walter Kim. Walter had been my mentor when I started at Merrick, an old-school sales guy who had retired 4 years ago, but still kept his fingers in the industry. He lived in Naples, Florida now, on a golf course, but he answered his phone on the second ring like he always did, gruff and awake even at 7 in the morning his time. Ray, what's wrong? They fired me, Walter. Silence. Then a long breath out. The Tanaka deal. Yeah, those sons of bitches. I told him the whole thing. The envelope. The severance. Brenda's dry swallow. Walter listened without interrupting, which was his way. And when I was done, he asked me one question. What does your contract say about the commission? It says they owe me 8 million. And if they try to stiff me, they owe me 16. There was a long pause. And then Walter, 68 years old and mostly retired, laughed the biggest laugh I had heard out of him in 5 years. Laura wrote that clause, didn't she? Yeah. God, I miss that woman. Me too. Ray. Listen to me. Don't call a lawyer yet. Don't call anybody yet. You need to understand why they fired you first. Because if they fired you just to save on the commission, that's one thing. But if they fired you to cover something else up, that's a different thing, and it changes everything. What do you mean? I mean the guys who run Merrick, Donovan the CEO and Platt the CEO, and Platt the CFO, they don't make moves like this. Firing a top producer 5 days after a record deal? That's sloppy. That's panicked. Somebody's hiding something, and you are in the way of it. Figure out what they're hiding before you make your move. Because if you find the reason, you don't just win, you win in a way they can't recover from. I thought about that for a long time after we hung up. The next morning, I got a text message from a woman named Lorraine Patel. Lorraine was the senior accountant at Merrick, a woman in her early 50s, a single mother of two who had worked at the company almost as long as I had. We had a friendship, not a close one, but the kind of workplace friendship where you grab coffee once a month and talk about your kids and your backs and the weather. Lorraine had also been the accountant who handled the numbers on most of my major deals. The text said simply, "Are you okay? Need to talk." Not on company phone. I called her from my personal cell to the number she sent me, which was a burner. A burner. Lorraine Patel, the most buttoned-up accountant I had ever met, was using a burner phone. "Ray," she said as soon as she picked up. "I don't have long. I need to tell you something. I think that's why they fired you." "What?" "The Tanaka deal. I was working on the quarterly reconciliation last week. The revenue recognition on your deal, the way Platt structured it. It's wrong. It's not just aggressive accounting, Ray, it's fraud. He's pulling forward about 40% of the 7-year contract value into this quarter to hit the earnings target the board promised Wall Street. It's going to collapse in about 18 months when the actual cash doesn't match the recognized revenue." Why would he do that? Because Donovan's compensation package is tied to the stock price, and Platt's package is tied to hitting the quarterly target. They both get paid massive bonuses if the stock is above a certain price at year-end. They were going to miss. Your deal saved them, but only if they could recognize it wrong. And I would have caught it. You always catch it, Ray. You always go over the numbers, every time. I sat down on my kitchen floor. Literally sat down, on the tile, was my phone pressed against my ear. I had been fired 5 days after the biggest deal of my career because the CEO and the CFO of my company were cooking the books and they knew I would find it. "Lorraine, I need you to do something for me. I need you to gather everything you have. Emails, memos, the reconciliation files, anything that shows what Platt did and when he did it. Can you get that for me?" Silence. "I'm going to lose my job." "No, you're not. Not if you do this right. And not if I do what I'm about to do." "What are you about to do?" "I'm going to let them think they won. For about 3 weeks. And then I'm going to walk into a room, and I'm going to make them very, very sorry." She was quiet for a long moment. I could hear her breathing. I could hear her thinking. "Okay, Ray," she said. "I'll get you the files. But you have to promise me something. Anything. When this is over. When you walk out of there with whatever you're going to walk out with, you don't forget me. You don't forget me. You don't forget that I stuck my neck out for you. I have kids, Ray. I have a mortgage. I need a soft landing. Lorraine, I promise you, on Laura's memory, I promise you a soft landing. Okay. Okay, over the next 2 weeks, I did something that I had not done in a very long time. I did nothing. I did nothing. I did not call a lawyer. I did not return the 3 voicemails Brenda Callahan left me asking when I was going to sign the severance waiver. I did not reply to the email from Donovan's assistant asking if I would consider a farewell lunch with the senior team. I went to the gym. I mowed my lawn. I drove up to Laura's grave in Lakeview Cemetery, and I sat with her for a long time, and I told her what I was going to do, and I asked her if she thought it was right. She didn't answer, of course, but I felt like she would have liked it. During those 2 weeks, Lorraine sent me files. She sent them to a secure email address that my son-in-law, who works in cybersecurity, set up for me. She sent them in batches, encrypted, each batch more damning than the last. By the end of the 2nd week, I had a folder on my desktop that contained what amounted to a full map of the fraud, internal memos from Platt instructing the controller to front-load the Tanaka revenue, a series of emails between Donovan and Platt discussing the board presentation and how the numbers needed to come in above consensus, a spreadsheet that compared what was being reported externally to what was actually happening in the cash accounts, and a gap of somewhere north of $30 million in the current quarter alone. I also hired an attorney, a woman named Priscilla Reyes, out of Chicago, who Laura had worked with years ago and who specialized in exactly this kind of situation. I sent her my employment contract. I sent her a summary of what Lorraine had given me, and I waited. She called me back on a Thursday afternoon. "Ray, Your late wife was a genius. I know. Section 7.4 is airtight. I've had 3 other attorneys in my firm look at it. There is no interpretation of this clause that does not require Merrick to pay you your full $8 million commission. And given that they have clearly fired you, in an attempt to avoid paying it, the liquidated damages provision is triggered. We are owed $16 million. What about what Lorraine sent? That is a separate matter, and it is a much larger matter, and I want to be careful about how we use it, because the moment we put that information in front of the SEC, Merrick's stock drops by 50%, and suddenly $16 million is a lot harder to collect from a company in crisis. I suggest we lead with the commission claim. We give them a chance to pay, and we hold the fraud evidence as leverage. That feels like blackmail. It's not blackmail, it's negotiation. We are not threatening to release information unless they pay us. We are pursuing a legitimate legal claim. The fraud evidence exists independently, and it will be reported to the SEC regardless by Lorraine, under whistleblower protections, which will entitle her to a percentage of any recovery. We just make sure Merrick understands that if they fight us on your commission, the timing of the SEC filing will be. I could hear her smiling, somewhat unfortunate for them. When do we move? Monday morning. I'll send them a demand letter. Monday came. Priscilla sent the letter. It was 3 pages long and very politely informed the executive team at Merrick Industrial that Mr. Raymond Holloway was prepared to seek enforcement of Section 7.4 of his employment agreement, including the liquidated damages provision, for a total claim of $16 million. She gave him 72 hours to respond. They responded in 6 hours. An email from Merrick's general counsel, a man named Frederick Ash, demanding an immediate in-person meeting to discuss the matter in a collaborative fashion. Priscilla and I took the elevator up to the 42nd floor on Wednesday morning. The conference room was the same one. The glass walls, the gray lake. The same chair I had sat in 2 weeks ago. But the cast of characters was different. Donovan, the CEO, was there. Platt, the CFO, was there. Frederick Ash was there. And strangely, Brenda Callahan was not. Somebody had made the decision to keep her out of this one, which told me everything I needed to know about how seriously they were taking it. Donovan tried to open with charm. He stood up when we walked in. He extended his hand. "Ray, good to see you. How are you holding up?" I did not take the hand. I sat down. Priscilla sat down beside me. She pulled a folder out of her briefcase and set it on the table. "Mr. Donovan," she said, "let's save everyone some time. My client's contract is clear. You owe him $8 million in earned commission, plus $8 million in liquidated damages under Section 7.4 of his employment agreement. That's $16 million, payable within 30 days of execution of a settlement agreement." Platt, the CFO, leaned forward. He was a thin man with very pale eyes. "That clause is unenforceable. Liquidated damages provisions that operate as penalties are void under Ohio law." "The clause is not a penalty," Priscilla said pleasantly. "It is a reasonable forecast of damages negotiated at arm's length by 2 represented parties." Mr. Brissett. Holloway was represented by his late wife, who was an attorney licensed in this state. The company was represented by outside counsel. The clause has been in effect for 11 years. It has been reviewed by 3 separate general counsels. And I have opinion letters from 3 independent firms confirming its enforceability. Would you like me to send them over? Donovan cleared his throat. "Ray, look. We can work something out. We appreciate your years of service, but $16 million is what the contract says," I said. "We can maybe stretch to 4, as a gesture." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I looked at Priscilla. She gave me a tiny nod. I reached into the briefcase at my feet and pulled out a second folder. I slid it across the table gently, and I did not break eye contact with Donovan. "Open it," I said. He opened it. He looked at the first page. His face, which had been the slightly flushed pink of a man who spends his mornings on the tennis court, drained to a color that I can only describe as paper. Platt leaned over to look, and I watched his pale eyes widen and then go flat, the way a man's eyes go flat when he realizes all at once that everything he has built is about to come apart. "This," I said, "is a summary of materials that will be delivered to the Securities and Exchange Commission at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, under seal, as a whistleblower disclosure. The materials document a systematic pattern of accounting fraud at Merrick Industrial over the past 7 quarters, directed by Mr. Platt here and authorized by you, Mr. Donovan. Revenue recognition manipulation, front-loading of long-term contracts, misrepresentations to the board and to investors, a complete evidentiary record including contemporaneous emails, internal memos, and reconciliation files. Nobody spoke. Now, I continued. Those materials are going to the SEC regardless. That is not a negotiating position. That is a fact. The whistleblower in this matter is not me, and I have no control over their disclosure, and frankly, I wouldn't exercise that control if I had it. Because what you did is a crime against every retail investor who bought this company's stock on the basis of your fraudulent reports. Donovan's mouth opened and closed. He looked like a fish. However, I said, my claim under Section 7.4 is a separate matter. It is enforceable regardless of the fraud investigation, and you have a choice to make. You can pay me the $16 million I am owed today, and I will sign a release on that specific claim, or you can fight me, and I will win in court, and by that time your stock will be at $3 a share, and the $70 million in legal fees and penalties you're about to be swimming in will make my $16 million look like pocket change. Your call. Platt stood up. He walked out of the room without a word. I watched him go. I felt, I have to admit, a small and petty satisfaction. Donovan sat very still. Frederick Ash, the general counsel, whispered something in his ear. Donovan nodded. Ash turned to Priscilla. We'll need a few hours. You have until 5 o'clock today, Priscilla said. After that, my client's position hardens considerably. They paid. Of course they paid. They wired $16 million into a trust account by 4:45 that afternoon, and I signed a narrow release that covered only my commission claim and nothing else. Priscilla had drafted it beautifully. It did not prevent me from testifying. It did not prevent Lorraine from her whistleblower filing. It did not prevent anything. The SEC filing went in at 10 o'clock the next morning. Lorraine had drafted it with her own attorney, and she had included everything. The stock opened down 18% on Friday morning. By the following Wednesday, when the SEC announced a formal investigation, it was down 41%. Donovan resigned within 2 weeks. Platt was indicted 3 months later and is now, as I understand it, in the middle of negotiating a plea deal that involves a prison sentence in the range of 4 to 7 years. The board brought in an outside restructuring team, and Merrick Industrial, which at its peak had been a $5 billion company, is currently in the process of being broken up and sold for parts. The range whistleblower award is expected to exceed $4 million under the SEC's whistleblower program, which entitles qualified whistleblowers to between 10 and 30% of monetary sanctions above $1 million. She's not going to lose her job. She already quit. She took a position as controller at a smaller manufacturing company in Akron, and she brought 2 of her best analysts with her, and she is, by all accounts, thriving. I wrote her a reference letter. I also, quietly and through intermediaries, made sure that the signing bonus at her new job was a little larger than it otherwise would have been. Walter called me on the day the first news broke. He did not say much. He just said, "Laura would be proud of you, Ray." And I cried a little again because he was right. I have spent some of the money, but not much. I paid off my house. I set up trusts for my 2 grandchildren's college education. I donated a significant amount to the oncology wing at the hospital where Laura was treated. And I bought myself a fishing boat, a small one, nothing fancy, because I had promised Laura 20 years ago that when I retired, I would take her fishing on Lake Erie, and I never got the chance. And now I go out on Sunday mornings by myself and I talk to her. I tell her what I'm catching. I tell her what the grandchildren are up to. I tell her that her red pen, 12 years ago, at our kitchen table, was worth $16 million. Sometimes, out on the water, I think about Brenda Callahan, and the envelope, and the little tilt of her head. I do not feel much about her anymore. I heard she got laid off in the second round of cuts at Merrick, 2 months after I got my money. I heard she is selling real estate now, somewhere in the eastern suburbs. I wished her no particular ill, and I wish her no particular ill now. But I will say this. If somebody ever slides an envelope across a table at you and tells you it isn't personal, do not believe them. Take the envelope. Go home. Read your contracts. Call the people who love you and who taught you what fair looks like. And if you are very lucky, the way I was lucky, you will discover that somebody, a long time ago, left a red pen in the margins of your life, and you will discover that that red pen is louder than any shouting, louder than any lawsuit, louder than any threat any coward in a gray suit could ever make. That's what I learned. That's what I want you to know. I didn't shout. I never shouted. I never shouted. I didn't need to. The contract shouted for me.